You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Well, welcome back. Another episode of RX Radio. Starting off, Sarah, is that two? Did you throw two?
I'll throw two though.
The cavalier relationship you have with nicotine is interesting.
Man, yeah, it's the thing about nicotine is you just go about your day. Well, if you go about your day without nicotine, you just go about your day.
Okay.
With nicotine, you just go about your day with little moments that are better because of nicotine.
I never got it, man. I never got it. You know what we need is we need to pick up a nicotine sponsor.
Dude, I actually hit up a company and they were open to it, and then I just ghosted them. Yeah. So let me. I'll pick that thread back up.
Yeah, I feel bad. You know what? And it's not like I'm averse to drugs, right?
Yeah, drugs are
like
cool.
I'm actually surprised by myself that for whatever reason, the nicotine thing just didn't catch with me.
What deters you is because it's not too late to develop an addiction.
It's never too late to develop an addiction. You heard that here first, folks. I just didn't get any feeling out of it.
You need more.
Okay, maybe that's not true. Maybe I felt nothing and then I felt nauseous.
Yeah,
those are the two states that I experienced.
It's interesting because like my first exposure to nicotine was through chewing tobacco, and like you have to really want to get addicted if that's your first exposure, because chewing tobacco is not inherently enjoyable. Like you're probably going to throw up the first time you use it. So if you go back and you want more after that, like you really want that addiction.
Yeah. I mean, chewing tobacco is to adults what like black coffee is to kids.
Yeah.
Right. Like the nicotine pouch is your Starbucks and there's whipped cream on the top and, it's dressed up nice. It tastes like mint. It tastes like pina colada or something. Chewing tobacco is like you're a psychopath.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'll give it another shot. And also, I just don't like the pouch as a delivery system. I honestly, and I'm going to be honest, I would be more comfortable injecting nicotine.
Yo,
I'm way more comfortable with needles.
I mean,
I'm just way more comfortable with needles.
Are we talking like mainline?
See, I've never done an IV drug.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good.
I saw someone inject ephedrine into themselves once.
Yo, that sounds fun.
It was at a gym locker room in Beirut, Lebanon. He tourniqueted his arm with a fucking knee wrap.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sticking around. Just clear, broad daylight, just finds it. Boop, boop.
Yo, that's
and I was like, hey, what's the Arabic word for he's not going to be okay for a long time? Yeah, it was wild, dude.
Wow. RIP to that guy, because there's no way he's still alive.
No, I mean, if you make that kind of decisions and you scale that out over the course of, God, when was I in Lebanon last? 7 years ago? Yeah, he's not around. RIP that guy. But like, yeah. I just the idea it doesn't do it for me.
Oh man, it's just, to me it's so convenient, and it's like, there may be a point I just start smoking cigarettes.
I was just gonna ask you that. I was just gonna ask if you're gonna go the route of Stu Lock, but
I feel like there's a swing back towards cigarettes. Like our parents' generation, like everyone smoked, and it's like, oh yeah, smoking's gonna kill you, so people stop doing it. I feel like it's coming back. Maybe it's like a parallel to the popularity of nicotine. They're like, yo, let's just get the shit like the cool people used to. But
well, I think what happened was we saw what happened when other people lived longer, and you're like, and
yeah,
like, that was kind of where society oscillated back to like, we want more of this. Like, are you sure?
Right.
Like, I don't think I do want more of this. I think I'd much rather a Marlboro Red instead.
Yeah. I'll say that here, that there will be a day that I smoke on this podcast.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I fully support this message. I guess that's kind of a segue in today, because I wanted to talk about special population training. Now, geriatrics was on our list, but if everyone starts smoking, we don't have to worry about training old people, because we'll all be dead before then.
Trims down the list.
Right. But it is I find it's an interesting conversation, because anytime you're categorizing training styles past an individual, you're almost painting with too broad a brush, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm hesitant in, like, we put up Q&As on our socials, and this is something that I'll get, maybe not as fine a point of like special population training, but I'll get the question is specific to 3 groups primarily that usually get kind of clustered in this, and that's females, geriatric, elderly, and teenagers or kids.
Yeah.
Right? So these kind of like fall under what most people are flagging as a special population, right? No one asked me how to train a 35-year-old man. That's sort of like your out of the box default. For the longest time, that's who trained, right? Now, given the emergence of resistance training and the emerging research and health benefits, what we've all known for a really long time, but science is kind of catching up with, is like, okay, we're starting to see, and not starting, we've seen the full adoption of resistance training into these air quote special population groups. And I think the first thing that we need to identify is which of these groups actually require some sort of special consideration, because the female training one, and this is tough because this is contentious at the highest levels. I'll use the word academia. The highest levels of the podcast space tend to have a general disagreement with the validity of the statement that women are women. What does it say? Women are not just little men.
That's
And it's like
crazy statement.
it is
I
a
lived
crazy
in San
statement.
Francisco.
That is a crazier statement, but it's like, okay. Wow. There was a time when I was worried about me getting us canceled. I think we may be on the other side of this now, but like, and this is what I don't like about it. It's this idea, because let's maybe start with women as a special training population first, and we can kind of, if we have time, we'll get into the others. What I don't like about that statement, aside from everything, is that it negates the human organism first, right? It's like, no. Women may not be little men, but they are on average little people, and men are just bigger people. So like, why the default unit that people play in with this language game is relating everything to a man. It's like, no, we train men like people, humans, bipedal hominids, and we train women like usually smaller bipedal hominids. The base unit of comparison isn't gender, it's species, right? I wouldn't train a woman like, oh, that's bad. I'm so glad I caught myself. I'm so glad I caught myself from saying the thing I'm about to say.
Fuck, I wish you said it.
You wouldn't train a woman like you would train a German Shepherd, because that is the worst clip of all time, because a German Shepherd is a different species, right? Because the thing is that when you kind of standardize for it, there are and at least this is kind of my experience and knowledge from research and anecdote and evidence and personal experience, is there's a few attributes that I find and have found to be true, echoed in research about training women, that usually come down to maximum intensity and volume. Yeah. Right. This is where I start to see, and honestly, in my experience, when I'm standardizing for just size of human being, it kind of comes out in the wash. Like if I train a man of an equivalent size, the only thing that I can really anticipate is upper body strength in men is going to be remarkably higher. Lower body, when we equate for overall fat-free mass, is going to be exactly the same. And some research maybe even shows that the edge goes to women. Yeah. Right. So I always bring up the comparison when having this particular conversation around powerlifting. Powerlifting is sort of this exemplary display of maximum strength. And when you compare, and it's tough because like it's hard to compare apples to apples if both apples are taking steroids. So it's like when we look at some of the elite powerlifting numbers and you try and, standardize for hormonal states, one of the things that without fail, drugs or not, is the majority of women, especially the ones in the lighter weight categories, which would indicate less muscle hypertrophy, maybe less exposures to anabolic steroids, is they're all going to pull sumo. They're all going to, have relatively inferior bench to a man of the same size. And those two things I think are really useful in understanding the big differences in training. One, why do you use sumo? Because it mitigates a lot of the need for upper body strength, or it less so in comparison to conventional. And then obviously the bench is going to suffer because it's sort of this isolated, but you're going to see big arches and short ranges of motion attempt to offset. But even with that in play, you're going to see pound for pound upper body strength is going to be a lot less. So that's like thing number one that I'm going to say, okay, if this special population has a consideration, or one of the considerations for the special population is going to be my anticipation around peak output in the upper extremity. A lot of this, I think, actually has to do with androgen receptivity. So when we think about steroid hormones are, and I'm not talking exogenous, like go grab a needle. I'm talking just like what your body produces. Steroid hormones are on a sliding scale of androgenic and anabolic, right? So there's androgenic, which is sort of like the secondary sex characteristics of like aggression and hair growth and voice and all that stuff. And there's anabolic, like does this thing put on muscle? There is less of those androgenic receptors in the upper body of females. There's way more in males. And there's also way more androgens to feed those receptors, right? So the males' upper bodies tend to be stronger. The only other thing that I would flag as a meaningful difference, and I've seen a little bit of this in the research, but I've noticed this especially in my powerlifting, air quote, career, is females tend to have an ability to work at higher volumes in closer proximity to maximum intensity. So like if you and I are like, hey, I'm going to hit a top triple. So 3 reps of a back squat. I don't know. If I were to ask you what your triple is in relation to your 1 rep max, what does that usually factor in as a percentage? Are you coming in like low 90s?
Yeah, probably right around there.
Yeah. Okay. So say we do 90% is our top triple. So if we take our 3 rep max and we're like, okay, that was our 3 rep max, we can extrapolate out a 1 rep max that's maybe 10% higher than whatever that number is we did for 3. I find your ability to do that with females, that 10% jump is probably more like 5.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So what that means essentially is that women have an ability, as I find especially more so with the lower body, to work at higher volumes in a relative proximity to their maximum output of their 1 rep. But other than that, we train them like smaller people. We don't train them like smaller men because we don't train men like men. We train men like people, right, like human beings. And it's such a, you know what it is? It's such a browbeating misnomer in like a projection of misogyny on the fitness. It's like, look, man, we're all trying to figure this out. Everyone's got goals and we're all like, no one's working to suppress anyone. Like we're just trying to train people to get better. And so I find it's, as far as special populations go, one, it's not necessarily special in the sense that it's 50% of the population. Right. And I mean, it's often now I'll go into the gym and it'll be disproportionately women to men in the gym that I'm in.
Yeah.
Careful with what you're about to say. But like, it's, when we look at it, it's like, okay, I think women falling under the category of special population training is in itself a misnomer that's misleading and forces you to to look for differences that I don't think are actually there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that sentiment almost exactly, and I have one point to add to it. But I've trained weightlifters for the majority of my training career, probably the last decade, and proportionately, it's probably been 2 women to every 1 man that I've trained. Like I've trained more women than men in weightlifting. And I've noticed the same exact things that research says, the same exact things that you just pointed out. And the main difference is that, and I find this to be a product of absolute strength, a proportion of absolute strength, so relative strength, is that women can typically sustain a higher training volume than men can. And I do find that to be, in most cases, because of relative strength, because they're training, they can sustain a higher training volume at a higher relative intensity, but at the same time, the absolute is lower in most cases because they are smaller, right? If I were to have a man and a woman of the same absolute strength, they can probably sustain a very similar training intensity and volume throughout the course of a training cycle, right? It's the one thing I have found is that women typically can train a little bit higher volume. But essentially, when we're looking at this, we're talking like small percentages, and maybe like in the difference of a snatch workout or a clean workout, it's 2 to 3 reps, working reps that they're doing differently. So it's a very small percentage. And the other thing that I found is that, and it is a training consideration, is that women on the whole typically tend to have greater mobility than men. I think as an overall kind of on average, if we're looking at just kind of the hump of the bell curve. So that is a consideration in my mind. And there are anatomical differences between men and women, especially around the pelvis and kind of also around rib cage shape and size. So those are two things that I think, like in terms of just structural considerations, there might be minor differences. The thing about that though is, even though there might be a structural difference, what I find with men, people who have, well, we'll generalize, some people who have less mobility, they need to train to increase stability so that they can have access to greater mobility. And people who have more mobility need to train stability so that they can control that range of motion, right? So even though there might be two different structural presentations between these two different people, maybe they're men, maybe they're women, but someone on each side of the spectrum of less mobile, more mobile, the thing that I'm going to change in training is nothing, because I need to train the same thing to allow one side of that kind of arc to gain greater access to mobility that they're lacking. And the other side, I need to train to get them to control that range of motion that they have in excess of. And that's, again, it's something that it's not necessarily a man woman thing. It's what is the person that I'm training, and what side of the spectrum is this person on? So that's not something that, if I'm designing a women only training program, I'm going to have something different than if it's a men only training program, because they're still doing the same thing. There might just be a different intention around it. And that's training. That's working with an individual. Is you need to understand where they're lacking, what their deficits are, and you need to fill that gap with some sort of action in terms of training. And even if they're on different sides of the spectrum, the intervention isn't very different, right? It might just be a little bit different intention. And that's something that I've trained with men that are very mobile, and I've trained women that are very immobile. So it's not necessarily this is a man thing, this is a woman thing. It's, these things tend to present in the population of women. These things tend to present in the population of men. But realistically, I can't generalize and say that this is a women only training principle. This is a more mobile person training principle versus is a less mobile person training principle. So that's the one thing that I would layer on top of that, is like, yeah, physical presentation, like structural presentation might be a little bit different. Maybe being man or woman influences that. Maybe it doesn't. But at the end of the day, it's more around intention than it is the actual training program, because the program doesn't need to look any different. It might just be a conversation with someone that, hey, let's work through as full a range of motion as you can, because I know we're limited. But in another person, it might be, all right, I want you to control that entire range of motion. We're not going to move outside of that until we can. So there's really no difference in terms of the sheet that I send, man versus woman or person A versus person B. It's just the intention that I'm communicating to them. And I think that's a greater principle within training, is like understanding intention and being able to set the correct intention for the correct person.
Yeah, none of the gradients that you laid out have a bright line between biological sex.
Right.
Right? Like I know men with increased Q angles and carrying angles. I know women with decreased Q angles and carrying angles. I know men with small rib cages. I know women with big rib cages. So like the idea is, and I think the takeaway is, understand how the human organism varies, and you'll understand how to train everyone. Right. And that's where, because this is where there's a departure from this high level understanding of what are the meaningful differences in humans, period, clavicle length to femur length, right? To femur to tibia ratios. Like these are all meaningful differences that have no bright line in between. Like this is a gender only bucket that only we have to worry about with male or female. Because I think that the high level principles that you laid out, that's about as in-depth as you need to go, not necessarily with a man or a woman, with anyone. Like these are the anatomical variations that are meaningful in the way that we would select exercises or can anticipate some ability to move through planes of motion or to have access to certain ranges of motion, to be able to control certain ranges of motion. But people are so down the rabbit hole is like, if you have to have a conversation around like, well, it's the luteal phase. And you're like, whoa, hold on a second. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, because here's the thing. And this is what blows my mind is, and I'm not going to pick on people, but like there seems to be the majority of people who put forth the differences in training men versus women tend to be women. Women tend to stand on a soapbox and say, there's difference between us training. And it's like, okay, but you don't think men are fucking with their hormones too? Sorry, dude. Like you can sit and talk about phases and the Mercury's in retrograde and that you're a Sagittarius all you want. But I know guys that used to trend based off of mood.
Ooh, a
little midday pick me. Imagine, like we sit around and we're like, yeah, fuck, I could go for a coffee. And like, yeah, I got a spot. Let's go. Imagine just like being like, I'm a little bit not aggressive enough today. Hold on a second. Let me just fucking trend banger in the delt. It's like, okay, hormone fluctuations off a predictable cycle just means you're zoomed in too much. Because let me tell you what, with the female athletes that I've trained, and they're fucking dogs, they don't care. Right. They don't care. Because if game day shows up and you're just like, well, and yeah. Right. So like, and in the bodybuilding powerlifting world, when guys are taking their hormones into their own hands, they have no idea what they're doing. Right. Not a clue. Like right. You could have days where, I mean, if you looked at the concentration of their estradiol or their T3 or their testosterone on any particular day, they went out, they boozed it up at the club, or the guys are blowing half the city up their nose, and they wake up the next morning with a little trend pick me up. And it's just like, we have no idea the preparedness or hormonal state of most guys taking anabolic steroids.
Well, the consideration that I have around that is not even a consideration, because it all standardizes itself if you're working within relative intensities, if you're working with perceived exertion, right? RPE8 is still RPE8, no matter which phase of the menstrual cycle you're in, no matter which phase of your trend cycle you're in, right? Our RPE it still holds true. And auto-regulation is how I run all of my training. It's not, linear progression week over week. We're not going to add 5 pounds, add 2 reps. It's all right, we're going to train hard today, or we're going to train at a specific rate of perceived exertion, no matter what that is. And that's something that, yeah, it will fluctuate throughout the month or throughout the trend cycle that you're on. But the overall progression doesn't need to change based on man, woman, whatever, because we're already equating for that because we're training at a specific rate of perceived exertion. And that's just auto-regulation, right? I think that's responsible training. Like, we've worked with athletes that, they'll come in, they're in the off season and they're in Florida, and Tampa somehow is the strip club capital of the world, and they were out until 3 a.m. and they're going to come to the gym 7 a.m. for the morning workout, and they slept 1 hour in their Mercedes truck in the parking lot.
You had to bring up the Mercedes truck. He's going to know he's going to know you're talking about him, right?
You think he's going to listen to this stuff?
Odyssey 2001. He's going to definitely know. Oh man. Yeah. If he listens to this, I will fucking die. If I get a DM from him, be like, yo, bro, what the fuck? Yeah. With your fuzzy bear claw slippers on, you know who you are, motherfucker.
Oh shit, man.
I honestly heard him say once that he likes supporting single mothers. I'm like, dude, you can't say that. Bro.
Yo, he's just a
Anyway.
charitable guy, you know?
Funny, dude. Oh my god, you had to go with the Mercedes. Yeah, I knew exactly who you're talking about. But to your point,
Yeah, exactly. Like it's auto regulation is going to kick in no matter who it is. It doesn't matter on age, gender, sex, whatever, however you want to split it. Like that's just responsible training, right? We're going to push it as far as we can push it, or as far as we need to push it, or we're going to hold it back where we need to, based off of how we're feeling on that given day, and we're going to give some sort of relative percent of effort that is appropriate to continue progressing long term. And that's just what training should look like, right? It's not necessarily a consideration of, is this a woman in front of me, is this a man, is this, it doesn't really matter.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break from today's episode and talk about Prescript Level 1. PSL 1 is a 16-week online applied biomechanics and functional anatomy course. If you're a coach or clinician looking to provide more value in your practice by solving more complex problems faster, this course is for you. Now, the course is currently closed for registration, but the waitlist offers a discount for all who sign up. So if you want to head on over to www.pre-script.com, get your name on the waitlist, get that discount, and be the first to be notified when registration is open. So again, that's www.pre-script.com. Waitlist registration is on the homepage, and we will see you in class. Now back to the episode. Yeah, I think the big takeaway here for people who lean into this idea of women as a special population is like, do you cover the big rocks of variance that scale across the human organism first? Because most people just go like, oh, what are all these pelvis and rib cage and carrying and Q angles and what? No, move out of the way. I want to be obscure and I want to be different. I'm just going to go talk about like, the luteal phase or something. And you're like, but do you know how to like identify rib cage orientation? Do you know how rib cage orientation actually sets the stage for like people being able to move through the transverse versus sagittal versus frontal? No, you just decided to pick up a physiology book and start writing content on the internet about training females, and you want to sound smart, but you don't even know the basics around training people, period. So it's like that's what we need to get back to. It's like it was when you understand like, okay, if I'm coaching someone, I'm coaching a human. Great. I need to know the principles of human resistance training.
Yeah.
And if you get those right, everything else is going to fall the wayside as far as relevance. It's like you got 90 minutes, maybe you have 60 minutes, 4 to 7 times a week, depending on, or maybe even more if you're in the Olympic weightlifting space. And it's like at the end of the day, you're sort of just playing the person, not playing the man. We're playing the person. And it's like if you see someone struggling with technique, it's like, all right, well, that's a breakdown. We're probably approaching a 1 rep max. That's your relative intensity. Okay, cool. But I think the thing, and I want to reiterate it before we kind of switch into like geriatrics or kids, is that a lot of people step over, to use a Stan Effortingism, step over the $100 bills of basic general training principles of people to start to collect these shiny objects of like, I'm using my training ideology to show you that I'm well read on specifics of endocrine function of females. It's like, yeah, but no, sorry, we're in the gym actually. So we're over here where the weights are. So those shiny little red objects that you pick up and are about, like, yeah, those are words for sure, and those are a lot of them. But we're in the gym. So it's like be mindful of like, what are you stepping over in lieu of these big rocks to show that like I understand female endocrine physiology. It's like, okay, and we're trying to work out.
Yeah. No,
old people. Yeah,
I know. I've trained a lot of old people in my day. So as we start to look at special populations as it pertains to age, I think and old people specifically, before we get to young people, there's maybe 2 things I think that make this population different that are still training considerations. I'm sorry. There's 2 things that I think may be more complex in this population that is still a consideration with every population that I train. And that is skill level their training skill and experience and prior injuries, right? Someone has lived longer, they've had more time to fuck up their body. And that's something that I'm probably going to make training considerations around for anyone that I'm training. But it seems to be more prevalent in an older population just because they've spent more time in their body. So with those two things, like they're not any different than any other person that I would train, uh, male, female, they, them, child, elderly. It's all like you could put anyone in this category. If you're in front of me and I'm doing an assessment, these are questions I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you, what is your training history? Have you played any sports in the past? Do you have any major injuries? Do you have any like chronic considerations, things that are, do you have a knee that's chronically flared up? Do you have a shoulder? Do you have a back issue? Like what's been going on before you came into me that I need to consider in this session? And that's something that I find to be more prevalent in the older population, but I don't think that's any different than any other population that I would train, right? Is I need to know where you've been so that I can figure out where we can start, right? And between prior training history and skill level, those are the two variables that, again, I'm going to figure out with every single person I'm doing an assessment with. But it may be a little different in an elder population just because of the time that they've lived in their body, right? What training have they done? What training haven't they done? The longer you go without training, the more untrained you are, the more deconditioned you are. That might mean that we have to start with more regressed movements, right? You might not have access to range of motion. So we might be using more external support or spending more time working on regressed variations of something that I were using with someone that is 35 or someone that is 12 or 8 years old. So that's a consideration for everyone that I train, but that's something that there's probably going to be a little bit more history in those two columns for someone that is a bit older, just because they simply have more time under their belt. They've had more time to either be training or not be training. They've had more time to either have injuries or not have injuries. So again, it's the same sentiment. It's not necessarily a conversation around their age. It's a conversation around them and where they've been and what their training has looked like. And that's a conversation I'm going to have with every single person that I work with, whether they're an NFL player, whether they're a video gamer, whether they're a computer programmer. It doesn't matter who they are or how old they are. That's something that, okay, I'm going to talk to you about this because this is going to inform our training. And that, like I said before, that's just responsible training. That's a reasonable intake process to have with someone. But there's probably going to be a little bit more history in those columns versus someone that is younger.
I think the biggest enemy to old people right now is other old people. Like, and what I mean by that is there's a movement of boomers that are gaining an audience and talking to other boomers from a point of authority not licensed to them by the field of resistance training. There's like orthopedic surgeon. I'm thinking of one lady in particular. And it's like, if my mom had was listening to this lady on a podcast, I would take a personal offense to it, because one of the things that I'm seeing right now is I'm watching old people who are authorities in our space, and I'll air quote authorities. I can watch them learn about resistance training in the same way. I can watch a 55-year-old MD, a man that has a big podcast, and I could say a few more things and we know exactly who I'm talking about. I can watch him learn about resistance training with the shit that he talks about.
Yep.
The same way I watched 16-year-old me learned about resistance training. Yep. But guess what? 16-year-old was over half of a lifetime of learning ago, and I know way more about resistance training now than I did with 16. But I'm watching this doctor learn how to learn basics about resistance training, and it's the same basics I learned when I was 16. The only difference is he has a platform with millions and millions of subscribers and followers, and he learns it at noon and records about it at 3:00.
Yeah.
I learned about it when I was 16, evolved my thought process over a professional career spanning over half my life, and then talk about it now. Yeah. Because one of the things that I'm seeing is I'm seeing old people advocate for training the way I would likely train a youth or a teenager. And it's heavy. Like I'm seeing a prescription of like 4 rep maxes for people in their old age. And I'm like, you come talk to me you won't come talk to me in 15 years because you'll probably pass on from not knowing how to actually train because you're old. And it's almost like that. You ever seen Big Daddy?
Yeah.
The movie with Adam Sandler, all fucking time movie. And the girl that he's with is like, he shacks up with the old guy, and he kind of has this like, oh, gross, like his loose skin and his old balls. If you remember that scene.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, he has a 10-year plan. And he goes, what is it? Don't die. And I think of old people when I watch them train. I'm like, what is your plan, man? Because to me, that's a terrible idea. Like, if we can say one thing about this special population that I think differentiates them, because again, there's no bright line in genetic variation meaningfully in male to females that would affect the way you coach or train someone on a day-to-day. It's not it. Oh, you're fat, eat less food than you burn, and then get in a calorie deficit and make sure you eat your protein and hydrate and sleep. Okay, cool. Like at no point did biological sex come into the conversation. However, as you the reproducibility of what happens as you decline in years, or I guess you appreciate in years, as you decline in your remaining years, is we know that a large part of the deficits are going to be neurological. You said something that was really well worded. And you said something to the effect of exercises they're not doing, right? So understanding what they've done, where they've been, sports they play or played, but what they don't do. And a lot of time that piece, that whether it's sport, whether it's play, that is a key feature that I'm going to start to hardwire in. Like, how can I assess the acuity of their sensory input, right? Because like a lot of what we're doing, like when we work with kids, especially when we work with youth adults, like when we work with a football player, ones that are coming in from Odyssey 2001 on Dale Mabry Avenue in their Mercedes truck after having a fine spread of chicken wings until 3 a.m. at the local gentleman's club. I don't have to worry about his ability to process and reflexively respond to sensory input because there's not enough tools in the gym that can replicate or even come close to the amount of stimulus this guy processes in his brain come Sunday midseason.
Yeah.
Week 6 against the Patriots or whatever, like there's more that's going to happen in a single snap of that for that guy to process and react to than I can make possible from a training stimulus input standpoint in an entire offseason of training, right? So the 32 weeks of the NFL offseason, I cannot throw enough chaos into the gym to even come close to that, what happens in a single snap. And I don't want to, because he has those snaps, right? So I can go, great, let's get good at the movement attributes that you need to focus on that you may not be able to get. Like, let's get you more mobile. Let's get you strong. Let's work on like regional specific hypertrophy or decrease systemic. Let's do all these things that we can't do in season. Let's do them now. So that when you can't do them in season, it doesn't matter. You sort of have this buffer. So here we have one athlete, this football player on one side that has a supercomputer of a sensory processor, right? That is that is what makes him so good at what he's able to do. He can make better decisions faster. He can interpret or predict his environment better, period. But on the flip side of that, you have someone in their mid to late 60s who this gym thing is the most amount of chaos in their entire life. Right? They've sort of put themselves into this reproducible box where their brain doesn't have to make predictions about the sensory input. Their environment is very much the same. I need to, and using a lot of the tools that you laid out, they are regressions, but I need to get them on a track to be able to respond to chaos, to respond to things they can't predict or haven't predicted in a long time, right? Like football players will talk about like intuition and game IQ. It's pattern recognition. Right. So these reflexes, the way they move, are in response to processing consciously and subconsciously their environment for so long. Most of these guys started playing football when they were 4, 6, 5, 7, Pop Warner, whatever. And now they're in their mid to late 20s. But if you have the reverse of that, You never know when the last time you're going to do something is. When someone stopped playing flag football for the last time, they probably didn't know it was their last time. And then 30 years had gone by of this decline of demand of sensory input. So this is where I think geriatrics, men and women, have a bright line in differentiating criteria that actually makes geriatrics as a special population something that will distinguish, or that will make distinguishable, a difference in training. And what it comes down to is there's going to be an exercise or two that I do different. That if for someone who's younger, I may prioritize, like, hey, we're going to do this oblique crunch with a rope to get the ribs moving and train some stimulus directly into the core. Where I'm like, okay, our oblique movement is going to be a med ball throw. You need to now deal and process and organize this sensory theater so that you know where you are. There's a little bit more, proprioception, mechanoreception, overall kinesthetic awareness. So I think knowing what we know, knowing the slip and fall rates, because here's the thing that the old people don't tell the other old people, because they don't know, is they're not falling because they're weak. Right. So it's like putting grandma under a 4x4 and having her do like Wendler 5-3-1 is not going to depreciate her fall risk, like being able to introduce some chaos and some reactivity in a controlled environment, so that when the step at the resort that you go to for Christmas dinner is a little bit higher than she's used to, she's able to and has the faculties in there waiting, ready to respond to that chaos. So that's something where I think so far, men and women, that's not a conversation of special population. Geriatrics very much is something. But the thing that I want to call attention to is, okay, we understand this. There's a cognitive decline. Maybe it's a lack of sensory input. What does that mean? It means like one or two exercises are going to be different. One or two exercises is going to lean more towards this as an outcome and a training goal than that as an outcome or a training goal, right? It's going to lean, if I have 45 minutes with someone and, I can do, and there's obviously context to this, but like I could do a bench press or med ball throws. It's like, it's a no-brainer. I'm doing the med ball throws because the goal is more sensory in its orientation than it is output in its orientation. Because the kicker is, when you can start to get these sensory reflexes online, you're going to notice general strength improve. You're going to notice mobility improve. You're going to notice sort of the lights come on in the theater of their conscious awareness of where their body is in space, and all the physical attributes that they have, they're going to be able to express because they're not limited by the understanding of where they are in space. So it's a big difference in theory, in principle, but in practice it means, okay, I just need to think a little bit. Is this the variation of the exercise that pushes me towards a specific goal set forth by this special population? No? Okay, then I'm going to switch it to a variation that's more in line with that goal. But at the big principle of training, we have a goal and we have tools. Does the tool work us towards that goal? And that's really like, that remains the same, but the goals and the tools change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it perfectly. The goal is going to largely dictate the training more so than the population, right? Someone who is older, like a geriatric population, their goal might be to live longer, to not fall, to be able to do the activities of daily living that they need to do, right? And it might seem like a mundane goal to someone that's younger, but there's specific things that we can do in training that align with those goals. And think of, maybe a 65, a 70-year-old versus a 25-year-old that was in a motorcycle accident, right? Those might be the same exact goals that those two people have. And it's not necessarily the age of the person, it's their level of ability that's dictating the training. So it's, again, when it comes to talking about training for special populations, the conversation in my mind should be more around, let's train for specific goals, and let's take this person from whatever their skill level is, whatever their capacity to do these things is, and let's move it towards what their goals are, right? It's not necessarily dictated by their age, their gender, anything that is, a buzzword for a special population. It's dictated by where are you at right now and where do you want to go. And that's the same for every single person that's in front of you as you train.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stigma around special populations comes down to, well, it's twofold, because like I do think that the cognitive decline is inevitable across gender, where the differences in gender are not inevitable. However, I think it takes an awareness of, oh, yes, we're all oriented towards a goal and we all need to assess where you are. I just think a lot of people don't have enough. I'm not going to use tools in the toolbox. They don't have enough awareness around how variables interact in bottlenecking the goal, right? Like if I see a geriatric and they're like, oh, like I want to live longer. It's like, okay, what are the barriers to that right now, right? What are the big impediments to that? Because like one of the biggest things that I find with special with geriatrics as a special population, it actually comes prior to the conversation around like, okay, should we do med ball throws or should we do 4x4 top 4 set of squats? It's like most of the geriatric people that I focus on, those are second and third order priorities to cardiovascular health, right? Like, okay, can you get on a fucking assault bike and not be totally gassed? Like, can you walk 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 steps a day? Like, it's not as, I think people may understand like, oh, your goal is this. Okay, into the gym we go. It's like, okay, you need to open up your aperture a little bit. You need to be more mindful of what is stopping them from reaching their goal. Because I think a lot of people, they pare that list down too short, and they don't understand how we talked about phasic potentiation and periodization the other day. It's like basically you go, all right, what's the first bottleneck? Okay, this. All right, let's work through that. Next program. Oh, what's this bottleneck? Okay, it's this. Work through that. Okay, have we succumbed to any previous bottlenecks? Have we kind of regressed in any other training adaptation? No? Okay, then we keep pushing forward. But it's like being able to identify what those bottlenecks are. Because like understanding that, hey, look, grandma's not strong because grandma's has no idea where she is, right? Not like from like a dementia standpoint, which may be, but like from a neuromuscular physiological standpoint of kinematic awareness, it's like, yeah, like is the priority to put her on a leg press? Because I think it's funny when I look at the slip and fall thing, obviously it's a pertinent conversation for both of us. Our parents are within that age range where that's a fear in the back of anyone's mind. But when I watch, honestly, when I watch old people talk about training, they fall into the very two-dimensional trap. They go, there was studies done about weightlifting and bone density. But let me tell you something. Like, I don't know. You and I are competitive weightlifters, or have been, to like a non-trivial degree. Like you and I have lifted weight that a fraction of the percentage of the world of people that have ever existed are able to lift. But dude, if I take a header off a stairwell, I'm breaking something.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm 72 floors up. Like I'm not, it's like bone density is great, but it's the same thing we talk about in level 1. Everyone who has a rudimentary understanding of biomechanics focuses on tissue tolerance. Everyone has a sophisticated understanding of biomechanics, understands applied force. So it's like, it's the same thing when we talk about the bone density slip and fall conversation in the elderly, right? Everyone will go, well, we need to, resistance training has been shown to increase bone density, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah. But again, like I probably have some of the thickest bones of anyone I know, given the amount of stress I put them under. If I fucking, someone rolls on me with a lead pipe, I'm breaking my leg. Because that's applied force is greater than this. How dense can your bones be? To how traumatic can falls be? Right? Like if you're walking down, if you take a flight and you end up with the mobile set of stairs, and you're coming down this rickety set of stairs, it's like if you slip from 5 stairs up and you smack down on the fucking tarmac, the potential force, the exponential potential force of every step up is only going to increase the applied force. So you can only make your bones, unless you're fucking Wolverine, you you only make your bones so dense before our potential to apply more force than our potential to improve density of the bone. And it just shows a lack of sophistication in the way people solve problems around biomechanics. So it's like, oh, we need to focus on bone density for elderly. Squat 4 reps. It's like, yo, how about grandma just doesn't fall over? Maybe we focus on that. And if granny doesn't fall over, and not to say that we're not going to weight train her, but priority number 1 is don't fall over. Then that's understanding vestibulospinal reflex, vestibulo-ocular reflex, what's the last one? VCR. The vestibular-colic reflex, so how your neck responds to the position of your head. And it's like, yeah, like that. Because you can only make your bones so dense, but your ability to, like, when's the last time you fell over?
Oh, dude, I almost took a spill last night.
We're getting up there, dog. We're getting up there.
Know.
Set the scene for me.
Oh, man, I'm just in a hotel room. There's like these laminate floors. And I just stepped on it, and I just went like almost full splits.
Did you fall?
I was right by the bed. I caught myself on the bed, but it was a close call, man.
But
that could have been it.
They could have been it. R.I.P. What got Jay? The linoleum floor got Jay. But the point of this story kind of proves the point. It's like, well, you saved yourself using the bed. You were able to respond. You're aware of your environment. Could have been a different story. You could have been, hitting me with the life alert this morning and be like, yo, I've fallen and I can't get up.
I know.
So it's like, okay, but why is that story so prevalent in old age? The falls don't occur due to weakness. The fractures and breaks occur due to weakness. But it's like, can't we stop the occurrence of falls? Like, I think I may have slipped up the stairs in my new apartment in San Francisco earlier this year. But again, caught myself. The number of times that I've fallen over in my life, let's say my adult life, is probably 0.
Right.
I don't think I've ever been unable to save myself. So it's like, okay, what changes as we get older? It's like it's the cognitive, it's the sensory, it's the awareness, it's the environment, it's the reflexes, it's the ability to respond to chaos. So everyone's sitting there going like, bone density, yay for 4 rep max. And you're just like, bigger opportunity is just stop falling. I haven't fallen over in 30 years. All right. If I can make that 30-year window of not falling over from 60 to 90 years old, then I don't have to worry about it. Now, I will, as a byproduct of training progression, get to a point where I'm more confident in lifting some of these heavier weights under load. But it's like watching people just not understand the principles, because it is a fundamental problem when people look at injuries in a less sophisticated fashion. They always focus on the tissue tolerance, always. Quad tendonitis, terminal knee extension, strengthen that quad tendon. It's like, okay, there's more to it than that. Like, why aren't we looking at the hip and ankle mechanics? Is the tibia rotating? Are we compensating in IR? Is the pelvis dumping forward? Like, it's not about just the knee. The knee is just a site of pain, right? So it's like, I see that in the elderly, and I see other old people just learning how to train to be like, wow, bone density. It's like, I feel like I'm holding the fucking paper sign in the meme. And I just, don't fall over, idiots. And we can train that attribute and we can train that quality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that happens also when people just look at these things under a microscope, right? We're looking at one variable here that has some sort of correlation to people falling and breaking bones. Is okay, they have lessened bone density. But there's so many other variables that responsible training will take care of that allow this situation to not ever happen. And that's the thing that I think gets missed when people they zoom in on these very specific variables. Like, I remember a while ago, there's like some study that came out that like getting 8,000 or 10,000 steps a day reduces all causes of mortality by like 50%. Like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So you just need to walk and you're 50% less likely to die. But the thing is, you're probably still 100% likely to die somehow, some way. So if you zoom in on these variables, it can seem very black and white. Like, okay, if I increase bone density, I won't fall, I won't die. But increased bone density is tangential to the point of, if we continue to train and we have greater cardiovascular capacity, if we have better coordination, if we have greater bone density. But these are all effects of training. So as long as someone's training and there's a responsible approach to the training, like, it should check all of these boxes, and it's going to put you in a position where you're less exposed to these injuries just because you're more capable. And like you said, like, yeah, probably haven't fallen over in 30 years. If we can take someone and we can assess that person, not necessarily based on a specific variable, but based on the fact that we want them to be capable, then we literally just fill the gaps in whatever it is they're missing. It's like, I don't know if you ever played video games when you were little, but I haven't played in a fucking long time. But some of the like basketball games or football games, you could create your own character and say you only have like, I don't know, 500 points to fill in their stats. And you put like, if you put 100 on power and like 50 on handles, and then like you only have whatever left for agility and speed and all the variables. It's like, all right, well, which variables is this person lacking in? Like if their ability to sit on a couch is at 110% and their ability to walk 8,000 steps is at 0%, all right, well, we know what stat bar we need to fill up. So it's just really assessing the person that's in front of you, not necessarily based off of some presumption that you have based off of their gender or their age or, some obscure fact about this person that you have. Is actually understanding that person and assessing where they're at and where their stat bar is at a point that's lower than it needs to be, and then just getting them to fill that in over time. That's the thing that's going to help you understand how to train these populations of people. And I think a big maybe misnomer is a word for it, in like training women, training geriatrics, training youth athletes, training elite athletes, is it's not necessarily based off of whatever descriptor you want to use. It's based off of their goal. It's based off of where they're at and where they're going. And those are the two things that you just need an accurate picture of. And if you know those two things and you know training, then you know how to get them from point A to point B. It's not because they're geriatric. It's not because they're a female. It's not because they're a male. It's because they have a specific goal. And yeah, maybe some goals are more prevalent in certain populations, but it doesn't mean that this is how you train that population. It means this is how you train that person with that specific goal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think we save kids for another episode, but I think a lot of people, trainers who hide behind special populations, like as a niche market, just are pigeonholed in their skill set. And it's like, oh, like you've maybe stumbled across the variables that become most common, but you probably, because I think there is this idea in training that if you're the jack of all trades, you're master of none. I think training is actually different. Like a sign that you are a good coach is that you can literally train anyone.
Yeah.
Right. That you can go across these borders, these boundaries, whether it be age or biological sex or whatever, and identify those two things. And like there is nuance and challenges in each population, sure, but it's just part of the coaching process and moving someone from where they are to where they want to be.
That's it.
RX Radio, YouTube, subscribe, do it. Stop letting the boomers win.
Yes.
New logo.
Yeah.
Big.
That's it. Big things happen here at RX Radio.
Big things happen. All right, we'll leave you guys for the week. We'll catch you next week.